Welcome everyone to the first podcast or first Energy Free podcast. Here today I have with me a very special guest, Govind Shorwala. Govind, if you just want to take a minute and introduce yourself.
Sure. Thanks, Aryan. So, as Aryan shared, I'm Govind Shuriwala. I'm born and brought up in Bombay. So, as a part of my education, I did my undergrad from HR College, and then I did my master's from London Business School. I finished my master's in 2012. So, I've been working for about 10 years now. Those 10 years have been as an entrepreneur in the education, textile, and currently the mining space. And being a part of my journey and everyone's journey is obviously financial investing, right? Because you invest what you earn. So I've been an active investor, whether in the equity markets, whether in the startups or different asset classes. And that's what we're going to discuss today.
Yeah. So, Govind, recently the whole term of being financially literate and being financially independent has, been on the rise. It's spreading. People are getting to know about it, and more people, day by day, are wanting to get involved in it, right? But there's so much unknown material. I'll start again. But there's just so much stuff that people don't know about it that when they try to enter into this trading or whatever, they get scared of them, they run away, right? They just freaks them out. So I think today what we're going to do is that we're going to start off by talking about what financial literacy is, right? And then we're going to try to cover the basics of what a person who wants to become financially literate and financially independent should do and should know about. So today we're just going to talk about the basics. All right. So Goman, you said that you're an active investor and all that. um what do you think it means, what do you think it means to be financially literate and financially independent in your own terms, if you want to phrase it?
Sure, Aryan. So, according to me, being financially literate in some sense means knowing where you stand with your savings today, planning your regular expenses well, and planning your long-term expenses well as well. So let's assume someone is at an early career saving about 20,000, 30,000 rupees a month, or someone in a mid-career saving a lakh rupees a month. They should plan their investments where they save and invest that leads to their daily goals as well as their longer term goals, which may be education or marriage. So being financially literate means being financially planned and understanding the different asset classes you can use to be financially planned.
Okay. What are some of the different asset classes that one can use to become financially independent?
So the asset classes, I'd like to keep it simple because they get more and more complex every
Yeah,
day.
definitely.
So historically, the most consistent returning asset class has been equities. Now, 10 years back, equities were simple direct stocks and mutual funds. Today,
Uh-huh.
equities are small cases. Today, they are PMSs. Today, they are AIFs. So I would bucket
Yeah.
it all and call it equities or stocks. Then
Hmm.
there is fixed income, which is where your capital is guaranteed to some extent and you get a fixed return, which may be fixed deposits, which may be corporate bonds. There are startups like Wint12
Yeah.
giving out different products. So
Hmm.
fixed income products are largely around getting you capital protection at the same time giving you a fixed income.
Uh-huh.
Third one I would say is real estate, which comes later in your career, but many people like to take 15, 20, 25-year-old loans to finance
Hmm.
them, which today is not an investment because it's not shown appreciation in the last 10 years, but it becomes a consumption asset or an important asset.
Yeah.
And then I would bucket the others as, say, number four, which may include gold, bullion, crypto, startups, which are kind of kickers in the sense that they form a small fringe part of many people's portfolio. So it would
Uh-huh.
largely be equity, debt, debt slash fixed income, real estate, and then the fringe part, which is your cryptos and everything else.
Okay. All right. What for, let's try to do this for those who don't know what is that, what is equity, what is, just let's try to clarify what these terms mean, because a lot of people don't know, right? So what do you think equity is? So for example, if I were to state what I think equity is, right, Equity is basically when I buy some shares or some stocks of a publicly traded company, right? So I have a small part of that company, so I have a small equity of that company. Is that correct? Is that what is equity?
Sure. No, what you shared is correct. So equity, in simple words, is ownership.
Mm,
Now, historically, companies raised money directly from the public because at that time PE VCs weren't there. So
yeah.
today, say suppose Reliance in the past wanted to raise money to build bigger polyester plants. They would invite the public to invest in their company. And when
Oh,
you invest in a company, you own the equity, which is a share, which is a fractional ownership of the company, where you
mm,
get the benefit of the upside, that is the company growing well and doing well. For example, the Reliances and the Infosys, and
yeah.
you're a partner in the downside. You can't lose more than you invested, but you can definitely lose your capital, which is companies of the other side, which may be the Anil. No, I won't mention that. So,
Okay.
so equity also has a major downside. You'll never lose more than your capital, but historically there have been many companies which
Mm,
today don't command much equity value. So equity is
yeah.
basically owning a part of a company you believe has a long growth growth trajectory left in the future.
Ah, okay. All right. So, you know, I wanted to, before now that we've covered a little bit about what debt, what equity, and what all this is, right? I just wanted to kind of, first dive into the different parts of being financially literate, right? So you have five core pillars of being financially literate, right? You have earnings, you have savings and investments, you have spending, borrowing, and protecting, right? Now, out of these five, right? Out of these five, which one, like, what are these five, and then which one of these five is do you think is the most important in order to become financially literate and independent?
Sure. So can you share the five pillars again, which is earning,
Yeah.
saving?
So earnings, savings and investments, spending, borrowing, and protecting.
Sure. No, so there is not one single element which is responsible, right? It's someone who understands all five of these, right? So
Yeah.
today, earning is something which is a function of what you do, whether you're a salaried individual, whether you're a professional. In earning, what you can do is you can practice your taxation well. So then there are sections where you're allowed to invest 1.5 lakh rupees under LIC policies or public provident fund where you can save a certain amount of taxation. As a businessman, there are certain clauses you can use to save taxation. So as a part of earning, the best you can do is understand the tax part, which allows you certain free investments or certain deductions, and ensure your earning is fairly taxed and not. So tax management in the most legitimate way is a big part of saving money while earning in that sense. So that's an important part of financial literacy. In terms of saving and investing, I mean, that becomes the most important part because today most people I meet among my age group, say who are in their early 30s, earnings have not been a majority of their income. How they've invested it over the last 10 years has been what's created the wealth in the long term, right? There may be
Uh-huh.
defensive people who bought real estate. There may be people who've done fixed income. There may be people who've done mutual funds. That's created the bigger gap. So, in terms of where you can go on the upside, is largely depending on how you invest your money, right? Because very few people get that hockey stick curve in earning, but it's much
Uh-huh.
easier to get it in investing if you get it right from the beginning.
Yeah. Okay. What is the hockey stick curve? I don't think a lot of people know about it, including me. What is the hockey stick curve?
So, a hockey stick is somewhat like a J, right? So,
Yeah.
today, what they say is today anything in life, whether knowledge, whether relationships, whether investing, goes like the hockey stick curve. So you start at point A, you
Yeah.
find it difficult, you have a learning curve, you may actually lose something in the beginning, but
Yeah.
slowly you start to get it, and then you start climbing and suddenly you climb like this.
Ah, okay.
So it's like, for example, since you guys are all young guys, Tesla, I was recently seeing a video, had three failed rockets,
Yeah.
but then the fourth one succeeded, and then it just kept growing, right?
Yeah. Yeah.
So hockey stick curve is how most things happen, which is the more time you spend at it, in general, the better you'll get at it. And there will be a result, which is a combination of power of compounding, learning, saving, investing, which will give you outsized returns. You just have to spend enough time doing it.
Ah, okay. Okay. All right. Um, okay. A lot of people are, are starting to trade. A lot of young people, like people my age, people even younger than me, they're going to the stock market, they're trading. But I think one thing that I've noticed with a lot of people of my age is that, we don't have a lot of patience when it comes to when it comes to trading. Where we see that we invest in a stock, right, and then we see that, oh, it's gotten 3%, it's risen by 3%, let's buy it immediately, right? And then if it falls by the slightest amount, which is, let's say, 1%, right, then people are like, you know what, we're gonna go in loss, let's sell it. So just what are the biggest takeaways you think one should know when starting to trade, or even those who are currently experienced in trading?
Correct. No, so Aryan, the best thing and the worst thing to happen to people is to be born in a bull market. Because what
Yeah.
happens is, whatever you put money in, it grows. Some consider it luck, some consider it timing, but most of them consider it their intelligence or their outperformance, right? And I don't mean it in any negative way. So
Yeah,
I've
yeah.
been investing for about 10 years and I've seen two cycles play out where it's always cyclical, right? Though in the
Yeah.
longer run, it's always been positive.
Uh-huh.
So if I had to look at it, I'd give three pieces of simple advice that I've learned over 10 years of investing, and obviously doing the same mistakes everyone does. So one,
Mm.
long term beats everything. So today,
Okay.
the lesser you do, the better it is. For example, if you like a particular company, say for example, I was just discussing with my wife the other day, when we were in college, Inox and PVR had just come up. And
Uh-huh.
we remember Nariman Point, it had opened, it had just started. From that day, which is in 2010, 11, maybe a year there, year and there, to today, their market caps have grown 10x. Now, how much ever I would have traded if I just had the fundamental belief that one, the promoter is corporate governance, two, the industry has scope for growth, Inox and PVR will continue growing.
Yeah.
So they've given that kind of return. Similarly, McDonald's has played out, though there have been many failures in the middle as well. But my point is, in the longer term, you get the opportunity for one or two businesses that you hold to outperform.
Yeah.
And one of the most successful stories is Jubilant Foodworks, which is Domino's India. You just open
Yeah.
a 10-year chart, you'll see the kind of outperformance it's created. So my
Mm-hmm.
advice would be, trading is a good thrill, but in the end, most people stop trading when they hello.
Yeah.
Oh, sorry, it just went away.
Oh.
So my advice would be that trading, most people stop trading when they lose money, but nothing
Uh-huh.
beats long-term investing. And
Okay.
today, businesses don't change overnight, neither do people change overnight. So
Yeah.
either invest in mutual funds that have given historically good returns, or if you invest in direct equity, invest in promoters who you think or have a reputation of being well known in the market in terms of corporate governance, in terms of credibility, and you can hold them forever. I mean, any history will show that long term performance beats short term trading performance. And
Uh-huh.
whether you enter in a bear market or a bull market, how much time you stay in the market is more important than timing the market.
Yeah.
So
Okay.
today, if I was a 30-year-old talking to my 21-year-old self, if I had just invested in an index fund,
Uh-huh.
I would have outperformed my intelligent self today, been doing all the buying, selling, trying to be better because just the
Mm-hmm.
index itself has quadrupled in that period.
Okay. Okay, Govind. So, a lot of, like I said, a lot of people are wanting to go into financial freedom, but they have no clue where to invest their money. Some people have money, they're ready to invest, they're very eager to, they want that gain, they want that returns. But where should they invest? What are the different types of assets that people can allocate their money to and can invest in?
Sure, Aryan. So I'll keep it simple. I'm assuming this is for people who are between the age of 20 and 30 and are just starting the financial journey, maybe
Yeah.
even 18 to 30. So I
Yeah.
would break it down into two or three buckets and I'll share each bucket and my opinion. So
Okay.
first is the equity bucket, which is investing in the shares of publicly traded companies This may be via small cases, this may be via mutual funds, or this may be direct equity.
Okay.
The second is the debt bucket, which is you protect your capital, but you get a fixed income. And third is your kicker bucket, which may be you trying to get outsized returns through crypto, through startups, or through funds where you may take into gold or whatever trading you do. And I haven't included the real estate bucket because I wouldn't consider it an investment. I would consider it a consumption asset, because gone are the days where real estate is yielding capital gain, especially in the larger cities. So real estate becomes a consumption asset. Ki boss, I want to buy a home. I'll take a 20-year loan. And in fact, it just becomes a consumption asset because mathematically today residential yields in big cities are 1 to 3%. I mean, you never need to buy a house. You can literally rent a house and it'll be cheaper than taking a loan and buying a house.
Yeah.
So Aryan, I think the most important bucket, and historically it's proven, whether in India, whether in America, equities outperform most assets for the longest period of time, right? And everyone enters equity initially ki boss, I'll find some undervalued company which people don't know and make a lottery. Many times corporate governance, many times industry, many times cycles, they lose well. One thing I've realized about equity in the last 10 years is people who do it consistently, people who keep it simple, and people who maintain the discipline outperform most of the lottery seekers or the trying to find value in dark places seekers. So I'll just share examples. Today, if you just invested in index funds in India, which is replicate the top indices, you would have beaten 80% of the mutual funds or the PMSs because the index has done significantly well. Now, what does the index contain? Say the large index, say Nifty or Sensex. It contains your Reliance, it contains your L&T, it contains your HDFC Bank, it contains your Kotak Bank. All of them have grown and done well. So if I was 20 today, if I was 18, I would look at a systematic investment, which is monthly, annually, depending on what you do, in a combination of index funds and mutual funds. And if you really, really want to go direct, the problem in going direct is corporate governance is a big issue, which in large companies is known, but in small and mid-cap companies are not known. What corporate governance means is, how is the promoter handling money? Is he doing it honestly? Is he allocating it well? So today you may invest in businesses which you feel may do well. And as a youngster, if I was 20 and invested in, say, an Inox or a PVR, which was new at that time, or a McDonald's or a Domino's, I would have done phenomenally well. But at the same time, if I'd invested in other businesses where corporate governance was an issue, it wouldn't have done well. So my advice for, and there's small cases as well, which is a new phenomenon, which is somewhat like a mutual fund. So my thinking is, first of all, you need to understand this money which you're investing is for the long term, and long term is in 1 year, 2 years. This would be, boss, for my wedding or for buying a house, which would be 10 years plus. If not 10 years plus, at least 5 years plus. Option one, simple mutual funds and simple index funds, which have historically done well. This is like the slow and steady wins the race. Option two, which would be pick up some direct equity in companies you understand, and stay away from the really small companies unless you really, really understand their businesses. And option three would be look at things like small cases, but I would bucket a small case as a mutual fund. Right now, it's a bull market. Small cases sound sexy, but there are expenses related to everything. There are diversification risks. So as a conservative guy who values capital protection and historical performance over everything else, if I was earning, say, 50,000 rupees as a 21-year-old, post tax, I would say save 40,000 rupees. I would put 20,000 out of the 40,000 in the equity markets, which is 50% of my net savings. And I would put that 50% of that 50% in an index fund, 25% in direct equity where I understand, and 25% in small cases. If I was really, really conservative, I would just put the entire thing in systematic investment plans in equity, mutual funds, or index funds.
Makes sense. Okay.
So any further question on the equity part?
No, I think, we've touched well upon equity. For those who don't know, just let's just brush over what's the difference between equity mutual fund and index fund.
Okay,
A lot of people don't know what three of them are. So
correct. So equity mutual funds and index funds eventually buy equity of companies, but each have a different strategy and objective.
mm,
Now, if you go into mutual funds, I mean, it's a 10-day topic itself. There's debt mutual fund, there's equity mutual fund, there's hybrid mutual fund. Let's stick to equity mutual funds. In that, there
okay.
is large cap, which would invest in the Reliance, HDFCs, and Tatas of the world. There's
Hmm.
mid cap, which would invest in mid cap companies. And then there's small cap, which would invest in small cap companies.
Yeah.
Plus, there are sectoral, which may look at pharma, power. If you're a really long-term investor, I think sectoral is out for me because sectors are cyclical, they come and go, right? Real
Uh,
estate was hot 10 years back, failed for 8 years, now hot again. Power
yeah.
was failing for 10 years, now hot. Very few sectors like consumer, tech have been resilient for a long time. So let's limit it to equity mutual funds.
Okay.
Now, equity mutual funds, some will be top 200, which you look at top 200 companies. Some will be blue chip, some will be small cap.
Okay.
I think saving time, just again looking back and taking a risk reward ratio, not wanting to crazily outperform, but wanting to just get the safest risk reward ratio. I would even disregard equity mutual funds.
Yeah.
I would simply put in an index fund, which is a part of a mutual fund. Now, thanks
Okay.
to Navi coming in, it becomes even more obvious because it's founded by a Flipkart guy. I mean, everyone will know
Yeah.
about it. So index funds mimic the index. So the index represents the top 50 companies using their free float formula. If a company is not doing well, someone else is being better, they get replaced also.
Okay.
So equity mutual funds, which are actively managed, will have a
Uh-huh.
management fee expense, which may be 1 to 2%. Index
Yeah.
fund is literally mimicking the index, right? With some maybe
Uh-huh.
error here or there because it can't exactly mimic it. But the management fee, like say for Navi, is a small fraction of what an equity mutual fund would charge.
Uh-huh.
So to keep it simple, based on historical performance, plus keeping expenses minimized, I would look at, and I'm not an advisor, neither am I SEBI registered, neither do I want to be one. For me, if I had to pick mutual funds, I would go for a large allocation to the top index, which is Nifty and Sensex, either of
Uh-huh.
them, and then a smaller allocation to the small and mid cap index. And if no index fund, I don't want to do. Similarly, I would do majority in a large cap or a blue chip mutual fund and a
Mm-hmm.
small element in the mid and multi cap mutual funds.
Okay.
So is the difference understood? Index funds don't need to do anything. They just need to follow the index, which is decided by the stock market. It's not decided by
Yeah.
the fund manager. Whereas
Yeah.
active mutual funds, it's all the decision of the fund manager, basically.
Okay.
Yeah.
Okay. So, this is we've covered equity. This is equity. Now you mentioned that there's difference. There's debt, there's real estate, and there's cryptocurrency as well, right? Which is like you said, a fan favorite right now, and it's one that a lot of people are using for kicker investments, where they get a large sum of gains over a short period of time, right? So let let's talk a bit more about these three. Debt. Let's start off with the debt. Again, what type of debt portfolio should one have? What should one do in this type of situation?
Correct. So see, essentially what debt is your capital is guaranteed protection. Now,
Okay.
guaranteed means it doesn't mean guaranteed, but I mean, in 99% of the cases, your capital won't be written off, but you get a fixed income. Now, that may be a bank fixed deposit, it may be a corporate bond, it may be post office schemes of the government of India like Kisan Vikas Patra. The essence
Mhm.
here is you're getting a fixed return, your capital isn't at risk, and you can define the period also you want to put money for. So, as an asset allocation, as a
Uh,
young guy, as I said, 50% of my savings would go into equity,
yeah.
25% would go into debt. And
Okay.
why 25%? Because debt is something that can be broken in 1 minute. Today, if I've done an FD or I've done a bond or I've
Yeah.
done something else, there's a high probability I can break it within an hour and I can get the money. So your capital
Yeah.
is secure, plus it's earning interest. And there are multiple other forms of debt like savings bank interest also, but that is too insignificant an amount and that's not efficient debt. So the
Uh,
role of debt in the portfolio is it gives you emergency money, it protects your capital, and in all likelihood, it's easily dissolvable the same day. Now, why wouldn't you invest all your money in debt? Because there's an inflation element. For example, today, inflation means the cost at which money is losing, the percentage at which money is losing value.
Yeah.
The percentage at which the cost of living is rising. So, say for example, today inflation is at 7-8%, and your fixed deposit gives you 6%. You're literally losing
You're
2% of
losing
your
money,
money
basically.
theoretically every year.
Yeah, you're losing money because you're spending more to maintain the same cost of living every year, whereas you're earning less on interest and whatever savings account or whatever you have,
Correct.
whatever debt you have. Okay.
Correct. So that's why you can't invest everything in debt. That's why you need equity to give you the kicker, but debt is needed in some of emergency form. And just out of interest, the funny part is in equity, the long-term taxation is just 10% and short-term is 15%. Whereas
Yeah.
debt is actually interest is charged at income tax rates, which in higher slabs goes up to 30%. So debt is not that tax friendly also unless you choose a government bond or there are special bonds the government releases. Equity is more tax friendly than debt also. So when you're here, I'm getting a 6% return on my debt, you may
Yeah.
get tax free 4 to 5% depending on what slab you come in.
Yeah. The tax rate changes in equity over 1 year, no? After 1 year. So if you
Yes,
hold some certain equity after a length of one period, the tax rate you pay drops on it.
correct. So less than 1 year is short term, which is 15%.
Uh-huh.
More than 1 year is long term, which is 10%. And futures
Uh-huh.
and option and trading is it's treated as business income. So it depends on the slab you're in, but it may go as high as 30% plus.
Oh, okay. Okay, cool. So debt is mainly so if I get it correct, that is mainly to keep money when you need at a moment's notice. If you
Correct.
need money for, let's say, emergencies or for something that you need at a moment's notice, right away, that's what you use. That's what you keep debt for, and it's kind of like an emergency fund, savings fund.
Yes,
Otherwise, if you keep a lot of money in debt, then you're essentially losing money because inflation is more than the interest rates you get.
correct. So if
Yeah.
you put a lot of money in debt, and by debt, today there's P2B lending also, there's what Bharat Pay offers, Credit offers, that's also debt, but I didn't bring that up because that is a risky element of debt, right?
Yeah.
I'm not giving any facts or figures, but if someone is paying 9 or 12% versus someone paying 6%, in most cases, the 6% one will be safer. So I
Yeah.
feel debt is the most practical way to keep emergency money, basically. You may
Okay.
do P2P lending, track record is obviously building, but it's not as safe as doing a bank fixed deposit.
Yeah. Okay. Okay. So, we've covered it. I think this will help a lot of people because a lot of people still put their money and earnings into a savings account and say, okay, now I will get a little bit of interest. My money is safe, my money is secure, I'm good. But little do they know that they're actually losing out money just because of this, right? So I think this will help a lot of people.
Correct. And
So
just one more personal
yeah.
advice. Obviously, this is not the only way to do it. I strongly feel people should separate their debt and equity investments. So there are hybrid funds which will move to more debt when the market is down and more equity when the market is up. Usme na to debt in. I don't believe in those products. I
Okay.
believe, and for me, debt ends at guaranteed security, which is FD, government bonds. So for me, and again, means it's my personal bias. I wouldn't put in P2P. I wouldn't put in, say, the other fintechs that are giving deposit at 12%. So I would keep
Yeah.
a strong index fund plus mutual fund plus direct equity portfolio, only equities, and a strong fixed deposit plus bond portfolio, only debt. No hybrid funds, no better debt like P2P. Keep it simple, keep it separate. That's just my
Yeah.
experience this so far.
Yeah, and hybrid because you're neither in equity nor in debt. Like you're in the middle somewhere and you don't know exactly how your investment is going. So just like
You are never
okay,
able to understand your return because it's complex, right?
yeah, it's constantly shifting from one to the other.
Yeah,
So
yeah.
yeah, so okay, so equity separate, debt separate. Okay. Great. Thanks so much, Govind. I think this has been a wonderful, session. It's been very informative and a lot of people will benefit from this. Um, yeah, okay. Cool, Govind. So I guess we'll talk next week and we'll have a new session for them then.
Sure.